How's it? As we say here in South Africa, a very warm welcome from a lovely blue-skied, sunshiny Johannesburg, wherever it is in the world that you're listening from, or perhaps you're just around the corner in Gauteng. Nice to have you here. Welcome to another edition of the Coaching Hour podcast, brought to you in partnership with Coaches Network South Africa. I'm Paul Rotherham, and I'm joined as always by my two lovely co-hosts and business partners, Marika and Mary, otherwise known as M&M. How are you, ladies?
Well, thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank
I will
you.
hand over the baton of introduction to Marika, who's going to tell you more about another lady who joins us as a guest today.
Thank you so much, Paul. Yes, we have Matjatji today. She is a coach, mentor, leader, and also currently nominated for an award for the Woman of Stature 2025 in the health and wellness category. Welcome, Matjatji. It's so nice to have you on the Coaching Hour today.
Thank you so much, Marika. It feels great to be here this morning.
Thank you. Lovely to have you. Now, before we get into today's topic and let everybody know what we're talking about, maybe just tell everybody that's listening and watching, how did you get into the coaching space?
Okay, very interesting one, that one. So I'm a science graduate, but one thing I realized about myself when I was in university is that I found that lab work was not for me. It confined me. So I needed something that will help me to interact with people. So I ended up in the pharmaceutical sector, in the sales and marketing space. And that's where I started, I was working with clients, so I would visit healthcare professionals. And I found that from time to time, after we conclude a deal, they will always, share some personal stuff, and then I just find myself guiding and coaching like informally. And then the other thing is at church, I'm also a leader. So people would come to me for prayer requests. But then over time, as I engage them, I realize this one does not need prayer. This one needs a mindset change. So that's where the love for coaching, but I was actually not aware that I had that in me. And then in 2020, just in lockdown, I found myself stuck. I was no longer fulfilled in the work that I was doing. And then I had to see a coach. To be honest, I didn't know what to expect. And then when I saw the change in me after those 3 months, that I had this coaching online because, I was confined to my home. And the transformation that happened made me realize how effective coaching is. And as soon as I completed that program, I enrolled in coaching and I've never looked back. It has been the most fulfilling part of my life so far. So that's how I got here.
Oh, that's amazing. I think that is always the best selling point, the transformation that you experience yourself, and then it's over from there. I had this similar experience. So on your heart this morning, you thought, or the word imposter syndrome came up. And it's quite interesting that you felt, that we want to talk about that, because it is something that, or questions that I've also been getting from clients and so on. So yes, maybe just tell us firstly, what is imposter syndrome for those that's not certain if they might be experiencing it?
Okay, so imposter syndrome is a phenomenon that was discovered in 1978 by two psychologists. I think it's Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. So it's just a phenomenon where an individual doubts themselves, they doubt their capabilities. So they've got this internal feeling like one day they're going to be caught as a fraud. And this is regardless of the competence that they've shown. This is regardless of the feedback that they get from those that work with them. So it's usually people that are highly accomplished, but they constantly compare themselves to others and believe that others are actually better than them. Simply put, that's what it is about.
And it's interesting, like you said, it's usually, people that is very accomplished, because I've had this more with people that is higher up executive level, having, that is experiencing that. And obviously, it makes it worse being in that position. So why are you passionate about this? Because you obviously have some, background on this. You've done some research on this. Why does this fascinate you?
It fascinates me because I have worked with a lot of corporate people, I would say highly accomplished people in my coaching career. And, I would say 7 out of 10 times, I would always pick up someone who's struggling with imposter syndrome. And it actually makes me so happy when I open up their eyes to that. They would come into the session believing that they're struggling with something else. But I will always uncover that at the root is actually imposter syndrome. And seeing how, after equipping them with the tools to overcome it, how it helps them to even rise to higher levels in their career, it has made me to be so passionate about it, because it's a real problem that exists out there.
Yeah.
Just to jump in here, Matjatji, I'm thinking in my own life, and I think, to be honest, in most people I know, I've gone through plenty of occasions where I haven't felt good enough, where I felt, sure, I'm really not up for this. As I say, I think anybody who I've had a deep and meaningful conversation with has expressed something similar. So how common is this, and to what extent is it normal versus becoming a syndrome? Because my understanding is a syndrome is generally abnormal.
So it is believed, Paul, that at least 70% of us have at least had one episode in our lifetime of having the imposter syndrome. But I usually say that it is forgivable if you're getting into a new level in your career, the first few weeks or months, to really have some self-doubt until you adjust. But if it prolongs, you find that it just goes on and on, then it means that there's actually a problem. Then we can call it a syndrome. And it is dependent on the root cause, I believe, and how deeply rooted that cause is. For example, if you grew up in a family where, self-expression was something that was not encouraged, you are bound to have some self-doubt later on when you've got to call the shots, being a CEO of a company. So it's those type of things that determine how deeply entrenched it is for a person.
And how do we know? Is this a syndrome? Am I just having a rough patch? Is this a bad day? Am I stressed? Am I tired? Is there a line that kind of pushes it over the edge to say, right, now you have this syndrome? And I hope I'm not alone here in thinking, gosh, I wouldn't like to have a syndrome. I don't mind having a bad day. But to be told or to be diagnosed with a syndrome, just that word alone makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable.
If it's prolonged, if it's something that you've been struggling with for a very long time, and you could also see things like you present with symptoms like anxiety when you've got to do a task, you've got sleepless nights, you over prepare, you are a perfectionist at what you're doing, you have feelings of inadequacy, and it has to be consistent. If it is like for a prolonged time, then it's something to really pay attention to. But this is what I also say, that you cannot say, I've been to a psychologist and I've been diagnosed, or a psychiatrist and I've been diagnosed with imposter syndrome, because it's more a social issue than a clinical issue. So if it has really gone on for a very long time and you see the symptoms that I've indicated that are just persisting, then it's about time you sit down and pay attention.
Makes sense. So how do you help people to uncover, that might be the issue that they are experiencing?
So they've got to look for the signs, like I said. That's the first one. Yeah. Look for the signs. Are you a person that normally when you are given a task, you become very anxious? Do you always believe you've got to deliver at 100%, 100% of the time? Those are perfectionists. Do you constantly compare yourself with others? And do you then, after that, feel that others are better than you? Do you feel, do you have a very low self-esteem or feel very inadequate? Are you constantly worrying? Those are some of the signs that you've got to look at when you are trying to determine whether you've got imposter syndrome or not. And then the other one is that there are people that they prefer to work alone. There are some people, they actually find it difficult to ask for help. Those are, like, we call them the soloists. It's a type of an imposter syndrome sufferer that's a soloist. And some people believe when they're given a task and they can't do it with ease, they can't do it with speed, then there's something wrong. So those are the signs that you have to look at. Another one is, are you a person that feels the only way to show competency is when you handle more than one task, the superwoman, So those are some of the signs that you've got to look at in order to uncover whether you are an imposter syndrome sufferer or not.
So what are the tools? How do you stop becoming, feeling those feelings?
Okay, you've got to have self-awareness. That's the first one. So once you know the signs, then you look out for the signs, and then you start dealing with them. And then the second one is you need to know that you're not alone. There are more people, if you can, for instance, that's why it's always good to have a mentor, in your career. When you've got a mentor and you sit down with them, you may actually find out that they've had to travel the same route, and they will be able to tell you how they overcame it. And then another thing is always track and measure your successes. Record. If you've done something good, record it. Because the next time when you get that feeling or thought of, no, I'm not good enough, then you've got something as a reference point that you've done and say, oh my word, but I'm not really incompetent. I've been able to do this in the past. And celebrate small wins. You've got to be able to celebrate small wins. And don't be quiet about it. Speak about it. Because when you speak about it, then you are able to get help. So those are some of the things that you can do to be able to overcome these thoughts and feelings of being an imposter.
That seems to be common these days. We don't celebrate our victories enough. I think I'm guilty of that in whatever field of my life it might be. Even running, I'm a runner. And I'll have a wonderful race and run really well and get my time. And before I know it, the moment is gone and I'm looking at the next goal and the next race and working on my next time. And I think running is a very good analogy to use for, well, certainly for me because I enjoy running. But I think for many people in life, it would be a good analogy because we find ourselves reaching all these milestones, achieving, ticking off the to-do lists. But we're so busy and there's so much happening that all we do is move on to the next thing before we've stopped to smell the roses, as it were. So I think that's a great point that you've raised, regardless of whether you suffer from imposter syndrome or not. I think just anyone should celebrate those successes, no matter how small. And we don't do that enough.
Yes. I find that sometimes I feel guilty when I do that.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, it's like it makes me believe that I've arrived and maybe I'm going to be complacent. I won't push for more. So I can relate to what you are saying.
But the thing is that you have to reward yourself because there's a child in you that's constantly seeking attention and seeking affirmation. So we are loving ourselves when we do those small little rewards to ourselves. Isn't it? You love yourself.
I agree.
I must say something that kind of, worked for me and that I often share with my clients, and I only realized this quite later in my coaching career, that I realized that most people have that fear of what people think of me. So a few years in my coaching, I started to realize, because I thought it was only me, and as I was being a coach and I realized that, but hey, it doesn't matter whether it's a teenager or anyone, or an executive, everybody subconsciously have that worry what people think of me. So just that thought to realize, but listen, whilst I'm sitting in a meeting, for example, and I'm keeping quiet because I'm, worried about what people will think, how I sound or what I say, the person next to me is having the same worry. about what they want to say. So they're so occupied actually with their own worries and themselves that they're not even thinking of you. And I must say that thought kind of flipped the switch for me.
It's true. And here's the thing is you're sitting next to them, you're believing that they've got, let's say it's some type of table that's privileged. You believe that they are more deserving of sitting there. And the difference between you and them is that they believe it's not that they've got anything different that they have that you don't have. They just believe that they are more deserving. And you also have to have the same mindset. That's all you need to do. There's nothing that distinguishes you from them besides that they've got that belief that they are more deserving to be there. And once we also adapt that, we will be able to beat the imposter syndrome.
Yes. I do agree. Like, it's all a mindset. It's got nothing to do with the qualifications that you have or the experience that you have, because someone with all the experience and qualifications might still have those feelings. So the self-awareness, how can someone become or almost coach themselves? You know, if whoever's listening now and they realize, but listen, I didn't even know that I have, the syndrome, but what they're talking about is 100% me. How can they start backtracking, almost coaching themselves to get that self-awareness, to pinpoint what is causing that so that they can start changing it?
I think it's to look at the patterns first. What is it that they, most likely do, or there's habits that they display, and then sort of try and find out where could this be coming from. Yes. Like I said in the beginning, that mostly it's in our childhood where we start to, adopt these belief systems, and then we sort of live according to them. So could it be that maybe when I achieved something, my parents overly praised me, and when I did wrong, they overly criticized me. And then in my adult life, even, with my career, that's the approach that I come with. If I don't do well, I think like someone is going to beat me up. Yes. And then if I do very well as well, and I'm not really praised the way I'm supposed to be praised, I feel like I haven't really done it well. So it's just going back and trying to understand what could have led to me becoming like that. As a child, what I could have, the environment I lived under that could have impacted me and made me to have those thoughts and beliefs about myself.
Absolutely.
Would I be right in saying that is fear-based, and anything fear-based is not healthy?
Yes, it is. You are absolutely right. Because fear paralyzes you. It doesn't motivate or encourage you to go for what you want. It actually, silences you to say, it gives you reasons why you can't do something as opposed to reasons why you can do something. So I agree with you 100%.
The thing is, Paul, it's the belief that causes the fear. So the root isn't the fear, it's the belief. Am I right?
Yes. And because beliefs, you've adopted them as a child, it's very difficult, though not impossible, to sort of come out of that. And until you realize that this is just a belief and I can overcome it, then you can be able to overcome it. So you are absolutely right. Sorry?
You change the belief. Once you've isolated it, you then change it. Because that's
work towards changing it. But it can be so deeply entrenched as well. So it will take time depending on how long you've held onto that belief.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important, like you said, to have a mentor or a coach that can guide you or use certain methodologies, techniques, and so on, because there's multitude of techniques, out there to change beliefs, but it's sometimes difficult to navigate it on your own because you see yourself from your own lens. You don't even notice.
It's true.
Yes.
It is true. And the other thing I've noticed is that some beliefs, over time, you hold this negative belief, and then you go to school, for example, and then a teacher sort of reinforces that belief. Then maybe later on in your dating life, something similar happens, reinforces it. So it also depends on that. You find that now you really believe, no, I'm not good enough, you know. So also that can play a role in how you come out of that belief.
Definitely. Good. Thank you, Matjatji. I think this is, quite an important topic to raise, because so many people that I talk to, like Paul also said, if you really have deep conversations at some or other level, everyone experiences it at some point in their life. Is there any final thoughts that you would like to share as a coach to everybody that's listening today?
I would say that one thing that I always encourage my clients to do is to always strive to raise their level of self-awareness, because that's where a lot of changes happen. When we go through life believing there's nothing wrong with us, we tend to find ourselves repeating patterns, making the same mistakes and being stuck in life because we just believe that whatever we're doing, we're on the right track. Yes. So once your level of self-awareness is heightened, then you are able to make a decision to say, no, actually, I thought I was doing well. I'm actually stuck. Like I said, I was in an unhappy career, but I was not aware because I was just used to going with the motion. So self-awareness is key in making sure that we get transformed and unleash our best potential.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matjatji. Yeah, and I think just having these conversations as we've done today here on the Coaching Hour, it's so important. Just opening up, being vulnerable, being prepared to discuss things that are sometimes uncomfortable. And I think there's an awareness there that often the biggest change comes through having difficult conversations. So perhaps if you're listening to this now and this resonates with you, or you're watching us, at times I think we make it look very easy because we're sitting in front of a laptop screen having the conversation. And when you're face to face and in the thick of it and in the heat of the moment, it can be difficult. And we realize that and we recognize that. And of course, we've got some wonderful coaches who we could refer you to. So if you feel that reaching out to a coach is something you would like to do, Marika is probably the best person to contact for that, and you can get all of those details on our Coaches Network SA page. And of course, continue listening to these Coaching Hour podcasts. So Matjatji, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. Marika, Mary, thank you. And we look forward to your company in the next edition of this, the Coaching Hour. From myself, Paul Rotherham, cheers for now.